Hello and welcome to Research Methods. This video is video 8. I am Balai. Today we are going to see the function of hypothesis. In the previous we have seen definition of hypothesis, and now we are going to see the left one. Let us go. Functions of hypothesis. While some researchers believe that to conduct a study require hypothesis, having a hypothesis is not essential, as already mentioned. However, hypothesis is important in terms of bringing clarity to a research problem. Let us see how hypothesis is going on. On the phase 1, formulating your guesses or your assumptions. You assume or you guess. Then in phase 2, you collect the required data. In phase 3, analyze the data to draw conclusions about the hunch or guess or true or false. This is the process of testing hypothesis. Specifically, hypotheses serves the following function. The formulation of hypothesis provides a study with focus. It tells you what specific aspect or questions related to the research problem or topic to investigate. Hypothesis gives you a direction as to what methods of data collection and analysis to use. That means what data to collect and what not to collect, as it provides a focus to the studies. As it provides a focus to the studies, the construction of the hypothesis enhances objectivity in the study. Hypothesis may enable you to add to the formulation of the theory. It enables you to specifically conclude what is true or what is false. Types of hypotheses. As explained, any assumptions that you seek to validate through an inquiry is called hypothesis. Hence, theoretically, there should be only one type of hypothesis, that is a research hypothesis, the base of your investigation. However, because of conventions in scientific inquiries and because of the wordings used in the construction of hypotheses, hypotheses can be classified into several types, but broadly there are two categories of hypotheses. The first hypothesis is null hypothesis. This is zero hypothesis or the original hypothesis. This hypothesis can be derived from a literature or derived from a theory. The other is alternative hypothesis or H1. The first one is HO, this one is H1. Alternative hypothesis is a researcher's hypothesis. What a researcher assumes based on null hypothesis. Let us take example. Null hypothesis or HO. The null hypothesis is statement that assume there is no effect, no difference, or no relationship between variables. That is, dependent variable and independent variable. As you know, we have those dependent and independent variables. It is the default or starting assumption in statistical testing. Researchers test this hypothesis to determine if it can be rejected in favor of the alternative hypothesis. Research question. Is there a difference in smoking rates between men and women? This is a research question. null hypothesis. There is no significant difference in proportion of male and female smoker in the population. This is a null hypothesis. We said there is no significant difference. By default, the alternative hypothesis is there is a significant difference in between proportion of male and the female smokers in population. You can say if null hypothesis says negative relationship, the alternative hypothesis should say positive relationship. After that, by collecting the data, a researcher conduct his research and analysis the data, and after the while it can get the results whether the null hypothesis rejected or accepted. That means when we reject null hypothesis, indirectly we can accept alternative hypothesis. For example, if we said the relationship is negative related in null hypothesis, and in alternative we can say the relationship is positive, and after we will test the data and the data shows positive relationship, we reject null hypothesis. Then we can accept alternative hypothesis. There is a positive relationship. Let us see the alternative hypothesis. Alternative hypothesis. Alternative hypothesis is a statement that contradicts the null hypothesis. It reflects what the researcher expects to find a real effect, a difference or relationship. If the data provides sufficient evidence, the null hypothesis is rejected in favor of alternative. Alternative hypothesis, there is a significant difference in proportion of male and female smoker in the population. So see how they are different. If null hypothesis is positive, alternative hypothesis should be negative. And then you can test by using of your data. What you have to put at the end is what you get from testing of your data. Then you can conclude what you get based on this one. This is how can we design or use hypothesis. Error in testing hypothesis. As already mentioned, hypothesis is assumptions or guess. They may prove to be either correct or incorrect. That is not determined now. We assume simply. The result may be in the side of null hypothesis, or it may be in the side of alternative hypothesis. But we have to test by using of a data. It is possible to arrive at incorrect conclusions about hypotheses for a variety of reasons. Incorrect conclusions about the validity of hypothesis may be drawn if the study design selected is false, the sampling procedure adopted is false, the method of data collection is inaccurate, if data you collect is inaccurate data, the analysis is wrong ways, the statistical procedures applied are inappropriate, or the conclusion drawn are incorrect. Because of this, we can arrive into incorrect conclusion about hypothesis for a variety of reasons. This means indirectly you have to take care of this error in testing of hypothesis. Any some or all of this aspect of a research process could be responsible for unintentional introduction of error in your study, making a conclusion misleading, or that resulted in wrong outputs. Hence, in the testing of hypotheses, there is always the possibility of error attributable to the reason identified above. What any researcher wants is to be right all the time. They want to discover that there is an association between two variables, say calving and traffic pollution, but only if such association is really existed. If there is no such association, then they want the study to support the null hypothesis that two are not related. While the former may be more excited or exciting, both are important findings. What no researcher wants is to be wrong. All the time, wants a right one. No one wants to find association which does not really exist, or just as importantly, not find an association which does not exist. Both such situations can arise in any piece of research. The first, that means finding an association which is not really there, is called type 1 error. It is the error of falsely rejecting a true null hypothesis. I hope you know there is two types of error, that is type 1 error and type 2 error. This in generally means when you are testing a hypothesis, when you reject true value wrongly, if you reject, that is type 1 error. If you accept false values, it is type 2 error. This is two types of error. Accepting false statement and rejecting true statement is type 2 and type 1 error. An example would be study which rejects the null hypothesis that there is no association between ill health and deprivations. The findings suggest such an association, but in reality, no such relationship exists. So this is type 1 and type 2 error. Null hypothesis or HO. The null hypothesis is statement that assume there is no effect, no difference, or no relationship between variables. That is, dependent variable and independent variable. As you know, we have those dependent and independent variables. It is the default or starting assumption in statistical testing. Researchers test this hypothesis to determine if it can be rejected in favor of the alternative hypothesis. Research question: is there a difference in smoking rates between men and women? This is a research question. Null hypothesis: there is no significant difference in proportion of male and female. Or imagine allowing traffic pollution to continue while it really is affecting children's health. That is type 2 error. Good research will minimize the chance of committing both type 1 and type 2 error as far as possible, although they can never be ruled out absolutely. The figure below shows the types of errors that can result in testing of hypothesis. Let us see again. When null hypothesis is actually true and false. When your decision is to accept and to reject. Let us see horizontal and vertical words first. First, when null hypothesis is actually true and when your decision is to accept the value is true, it is correct decision. But when you accept correct decision, that is true, and we cannot say an error. But when null hypothesis is actually false, but you accept that is false ideas, but you accept it, this is type 2 error. When null hypothesis is actually true, but when your decision is to reject, that is type 1 error. When null hypothesis is actually false, and when your decision is to reject, that is correct decision. There is no error here. So, as we said before, rejecting true values, rejecting a true value is type 1 error. Accepting false value is type 2 error. This is this. Type 1 and type 2 error is in testing of hypothesis. I hope everyone is clear with these error types, type 1 and the type 2, as I have discussed more, and also it is very clear. But what you have to do is take the above when null hypothesis is actually true, or when null hypothesis is actually false, and then come to the other side when your decision is to accept, and when null hypothesis is true, that is correct, there is no error, we said. When the null hypothesis is false, and when your decision is to accept that false, that is type 2 error. In opposite, that is type 1 error. So you have to take this in simple ways. This is very clear, I hope. If that is not clear, please write your comment under YouTube, okay? I can clear it by using a different example. Hence, in drawing conclusions about hypotheses, two types of error can occur. Again, let us see. Rejecting of null hypothesis when it is true, that is type 1 error. Accepting of null hypothesis when it is false, this is known as type 2 error. This is very clear now again. This is when we are testing hypothesis. So we have to take care not to make such error, okay? The other is difficulties or limitation of the testing of hypothesis. How hypothesis testing is difficult, or what is its limitation? There are several limitations that are associated with test of hypothesis, which should always be borne in mind by a researcher. Important limitations are as follows. 1. The test should not be used in mechanical fashion. It should be kept in view that testing is not decision-making itself. Tests are only useful aids for decision-making. Hence, proper interpretation of statistical evidence is important to intelligent decision, otherwise your decision is wrong. Tests do not explain the reason as to why does the difference exist, say, between the means of the two samples. It does not explain the reason. The tests do not tell us as to which he is or are the reasons or causing the difference. Null hypothesis or HO. The null hypothesis is statement that assume there is no effect, no difference, or no relationship between variables. That is, dependent variables and independent variable. As you know, we have those dependent and independent variables. It is the default or starting assumption in statistical testing. Researchers test this hypothesis to determine if it can be rejected in favor of the alternative hypothesis. Research question. Is there a difference in smoking rates between men and women? This is a research question. null hypothesis. There is no significant difference in proportion of male and female smoker in the population. This is a null hypothesis. We said all these limitations suggest that in problem of statistical significance, the inference techniques or the test must be combined with adequate knowledge of the subject matter along with ability of good judgments. With this, I come to the end of today's program. I thank you for your views. Please, if you like, subscribe to my YouTube and share it for your friends. And if there is a problem, a question regarding to anything, you can comment or you can write to me. Have a nice time. Up to the next. In the next, we will see a research design. Bye bye.